Let's start. Okay, hello everyone. We are in the second day of the conference. We have been listening to great topics from great speakers. And here in this session, we have another great guest. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Thomas Lancaster, and he will be talking about academic ghostwriting and contract cheating provision observed on a freelancing website. Please feel free to post your questions on the chat, and Thomas will be pleased to answer your questions in the Q&A part at the end. Thomas?
Yeah, thank you so much, Oscar, for the introduction. They're great to be with you all today. The research that I'm going to talk about, and really it's general observations about the area, has been conducted with Benjamin Dent, one of the student partners that I've been working with on academic integrity projects. Ben had hoped to be here, but unfortunately he's been suffering with food poisoning today. So I will present this. We're quite free form, so feel free to post questions and interrupt. This is luckily one of the longest slots at the conference. I have got plenty of material, but quite happy to use it as well to take questions and just to give you the most useful information I can, because for me, this is an area I've presented on for quite a few years in many ways. And the website that I'm going to share with you is one that people will have seen me present about at this conference before. I think it's 4 or 5 years ago since I've last done this. So it is quite a while. Things have changed. We've spotted some new developments there, but I appreciate as well that this is brand new to many of you. So I'll try and strike a bit of a balance, despite all the friendly faces that I can see in my view of people that I know and like, and really pleased to have here and involved with the session there. So a little bit of background. I'm a senior teaching fellow in computing at Imperial College London. Ben is a final year computing student on the BN, very excited about starting his graduate job soon, about to hand in his final year project, which is not connected to contract cheating in any way, far too advanced, like many of our Imperial students, are way more advanced than me about this. But I am interested in academic integrity. I am interested in conduct cheating. I've been researching these areas for quite a few years now, 15 years of contract cheating research, nearly to the day since I first presented on this in the UK in June of 2006. But let's start off with a very topical news story. This is in the news today. Get you working in the chat there. Some of you may have already been deciphering this one on Twitter, a bit of detective work, which is something we do in contract cheating research anyway. But any idea who these people are and what connects them? There, one of them I suspect is easier than the other, or it may be we have a very international audience who the person at the bottom left is less familiar with. Yeah, okay. Deborah says no idea who either of them are. That's fair enough. That also depends probably on the age of our audience as well for this one, and it's great we have such a wide mix of people there. But yeah, we got Frank Sinatra there. The other lady here is somebody well done, Felicity, not Crocodile Dundee. Yes, yes, no, that's, yeah, no impressions. You nearly got me started, so no, right. This is Dr. Elizabeth Hall. I don't know if that gives you any more clues. The other one is Frank Sinatra there. And this was in the Birmingham Post newspaper this morning, Birmingham in the UK, where I have spent most of my adult life, which I just happened to pick up. It has been in some other newspapers, but I just spotted this one this morning. And actually, it is very slightly a trick question here as to what they have in common. The actual story is about a complaint between the former for playing very loud music, but this person is much better known for spending most of her life providing a ghostwriting service, or what I would refer to as contract cheating. This is from the same article, Elizabeth Hall Associates, that 18 years ago, a sting operation showed that her operation in Edgbaston in South Birmingham was writing essays for students, and reason why you cannot just hand it in. So these services, contract cheating services, were being offered 18 years ago, whenever that was, 2003. And of course, they far predate this. Now, the site has finally gone offline, I would say, in the last year, offering this. But these are always presented as a premium contract cheating service, well, a premium academic writing service, charging higher prices. And for me personally, this particular person worked at the university I did in Birmingham, at the University of Central England, for many years as well there, which became Birmingham City University. As you've seen, I'm now in London, but so there is that connection there. So just quite coincidentally, then this story came up in my feed this morning. Now, if you read more into this story, then Dr. Hall has not had a very good life for the past few years, looking at what he says about her. And I didn't get to join us in this talk on the social effects of contract cheating, which is just finished. But sometimes this area does not work out well for anyone involved, regardless if they're a student or regardless if they're a provider. So just something to be aware of. But this also came up in the very first talk on contract cheating I mentioned 15 years ago. This is the associated paper. I also gave a presentation about it. And one of the examples I gave was about Elizabeth Hall there. Most of the data we presented with my colleague, the late Robert Clark, was based on a site called Rent-A-Coder. Rent-A-Coder was almost a reverse auction site where you can go online and you can post a request for work and people will bid to do the work for you. They will say how much money they want. And this is Collage Project, was from that original talk. Now, Rent-A-Coder does still exist in the form of sites that have taken it over, and mergers and other similar sites. The current one is a site called Freelancer.com. That site is still there, available now, and that's the one that we have looked at in more detail. So if you were to look there, then you would see requests like this one, which is just a recent request: solve math, electrical, engineering problems, from an employer who apparently is in Hamburg, Germany, has had one previous job which has been reviewed. They may have had more jobs that haven't been reviewed, rated 5 stars, wanting help with 4 exam sheets to study for an exam, and then needing help for 2 hours with 6 to 7 extra small maths problems. Now, slightly ambiguous what that means in practice, but I suspect saying you need help for a very constrained 2-hour period could be because there is an exam going on at that time, or something that has to be returned incredibly quickly. The data often about these things is limited, but the kind of data we can access is things like 26 people want to do this work and they were bidding on average 140 euros each. So there are various bits of information. I compiled this slide last week. I haven't checked to see if that job has been allocated yet or anything like that. But those are the kind of things you can see on what contract cheating, but just aimed at general computing contraction and other types of work. So there's a huge amount of data on the site. The bit that Ben and I were really interested in was how Freelancer is being used to provide academic writing services. And to me, that is particularly interesting because most of my previous work on this side is focused on the computing side. It's looked at people requesting computer code and programming and databases and areas like that. But academic writing is very much available on freelancer.com as well. So this is how the research study came about. Ben spent his summer being funded under the Imperial College London a Europe research program for undergraduates, and he searched the site for projects which had been tagged with the terms academic writing or essay writing or both. and we have data collected between the 7th of August 2017 and the 9th of September 2019. Yeah, Robin says good old freelancer. Yeah, good old freelancer, along with good old blue eyes, if we're using those of August 2017. It's because freelancer introduced 2 new tags that were available relating to academic work. They introduced an academic writing tag and the essay writing tag there. So if the availability of these services had been slightly more hidden before that point, then from that date they were very widely available. And the end date is because of when the data was collected, and this usual time period for doing anything useful with things that often appears, but no doubt we will hope to go back and review that should time permit. Now, by looking for those tags and complex code as a computer scientist to go and gather the data and process it and everything that went along with that, and spent quite a few weeks on that, we found 4,353 projects over that 2-year or so period there. Ben trained a machine learning model. I don't want to go into too much technical detail about this to try and identify if the requests were contract cheating or not. Our view is that it's accurate 85.6% of the time. So there is a small amount of wrongly classified requests there. The reason we did that is that we can go through and tag all these things manually, but then we end up with a very small data set in comparison just because of the work involved. So our estimate is nearly 4,000 of the projects are contract cheating requests. Generally, the reasons that they're not are because people put up things which are just general writing, and then they choose many different tags in order to maximize the advertising of their particular project. By the same token, there are bound to be people who've put up requests that are contract cheating and don't use any of those tags, particularly outside the writing categories. So particularly if they are wanting a bit of maths doing, like the example I gave earlier, but which is completely unassociated with that. So those happen. Just some general figures. On average, they receive 27.61 bids, so 27.61 people or companies offering to complete the work. And we can't always see the final price paid because there are all kinds of tricks. 10 years ago, you could see the final price paid for nearly all of these. Nowadays, the people requesting work are a bit wiser, that actually their requests are out there on the public internet. So they do things like they move requests, they close off the original request, then they open up a new private one so things aren't visible. And there's various other techniques to get around revealing the final price. But we have 696 of them with the price paid in United States dollars. There are other ones paid in other currencies, which are other complications in this there. So what kind of things do you see? Well, you can see nearly anything and everything that could be classified as an academic writing request. I just went through very quickly and picked out 4, which were quite interesting, but they're fairly representative as well. This very ambiguous title at the top, write a small autobiography. I need 500 words written about my hopes and dreams. I'm a 23-year-old entrepreneur in America studying human-computer interaction design. Now, the giveaway to me that this is most likely contract cheating is the fact this identifies what this person is studying and that it wants 500 words, because that's very specific for someone who wanting a real autobiography there. Sometimes people do want real autobiographies, they publish them. Robin, who's on the call here on the webinar, shared a really interesting example with me just yesterday about a company trying to sell academics writing autobiographies for them there. So it does happen, but these are the kind of things we see. 89 bids for that one. Well, $50 to get someone to write 500 words for you. That's overpaid. For whatever this person's hopes and dreams are, that presumably are going to be completely made up because they're not feeding into this process at all. There, yeah, I see in the chat we've picked up on the Bessinus research paper, 2,000 to 2,500 words by Saturday. Now, what the lecturer has done here is been really kind to the student, given them 11 topics to choose from, but so hopefully to try and get the student much more interested in choosing something they want. But this person has just passed on the topics. So the writer will choose which of those topics they're interested in. They'll provide the list of topics and assignment guidelines at request. That is an interesting development in the last few years as well, that for a long time, people would just post these file attachments so we could see them. But now they're much wiser that people will go away and look at the attachments, and they're keeping them hidden there. And then the big bit, most importantly, plagiarism could be a big issue if not written properly, because of course students don't want to be caught plagiarizing when they're paying someone else to do their work for them. We got the essay development, another one there about writing career objectives, but this one, why you want a scholarship. So somebody who is outsourcing the production of their probably application letter or their scholarship letter. It could be quite a good business if these scholarships pay you $500 or $1,000 than to get somebody to write a load of applications and requests for you there as well. And then a worrying one, a thesis report on infectious diseases and the impact on public health, which thankfully is not for credit and isn't worth a great deal. For that one, we see the person only paid $15, so it can't be that important. Hopefully they haven't become a healthcare professional or something like that there. Mary says, yeah, only 9 bids, perceived as more difficult depending on the range of topics. Definitely surprisingly, the business ones tend to be really popular in general, because business work is quite easy or quite general on many sites, but this one didn't get as many for whatever reason that may be there. Perhaps because the person bidding has to do more work to find out what this actually is, perhaps because of the short turnaround. Yeah, but in other studies, then we've seen that people generally, particularly the big essay mills, can turn around things for short turnaround. Robin mentions non-credit thesis report might be for an MPhil or PhD transfer. Yeah, may well be, Robin. We're going to come to PhDs very soon. And Deborah offers for $250 to write a Wikipedia article about you. Yeah, I'm sure you could do a better job yourself and for far less money, but that's that. So a few just figures from there. It's data we have. I don't know if it's that interesting, but you may notice the requests per week. There is a bit of a spike towards the main assessment periods there, particularly towards the summer assessment period, when there are a lot of deadlines, projects due, areas like that. To go with that, a bit of a downturn in the summer, but I don't think it's an exact science, because different countries have different academic years to go with it. I think it's quite interesting to look at where the requests come from with this, and surprised me a little bit to see the most requests. It's quite marginal, these top 3 countries in that list, but most of the requests for academic writing were coming from India. Now, there are a lot of students in India. There are a lot of assessments in English, so perhaps that is part of it. But from my previous research, I also think there are some requests here which are essay mill requests that are being re-outsourced through a site like this. That happens as well. And there are essay mills based in India. As you'd expect, a lot of requests from the US, English-speaking countries, as this is primarily a site aimed at people speaking English. The UK, perhaps unfairly represented in Freelancer based on the relative size of the countries as well. There, Australia, as you'd expect, and Pakistan, which I may even pair with India in terms of that discussion about the location of contract cheating providers there. I've just slipped in there. Kenya was on the list because Kenya is going to appear. And as Oscar said, it may be due to the popularity of this specific site in those countries. There's probably also something to do with where this site is advertising. It is a big name site out there. A lot of money goes through these services as well. We did find one from Moldova, just no idea why I put that in the slide. Must have amused me at the time for that, but it's almost to have a map and put pins in it. You can cover most of the world. Now, where were the winners coming from? We can't see this information for every project there, but the majority of the winners came from Kenya. Now, in a previous session this morning, we were discussing Kenya at the end of it. And this has come up in some of my previous research and other sites as well, that in Kenya, academic writing is looked at as being a good job. You can work from home, you can work on a computer, there is training about how to work for the gig economy. And so people from Kenya are offering to do this type of work. And this has come through again in this particular site here as well, that people from Kenya are being selected to do this work. We're also seeing people from Pakistan and India, two other large-scale providers of contract cheating services. The UK and United States too. Some people will choose a provider that looks like they're in the same country as them, or that looks like they're going to be a native English speaker to go with that. I don't know, Kenya tend to be native English speakers as well, but sometimes people have more confidence in those particular countries there. But 76% of all the winning requests came from one of those 5 countries based on the type of flags and information we can see. In theory, it's possible to fake this, but there are now quite a lot of checks in place on Freelancer where they verify your identity when you sign up and everything to go with that. We can see the final price paid in United States dollars is 696 cases, and the average price point there, $71. I throw that out as an example because I've released some previous research where, say, you go through a site like Fiverr.com, you might only pay $5 or $10 for the assignment. Pay a lot more going through this site, but perhaps you get more control over who you choose. But again, we were talking about this one earlier, that you can set up a very nice business taking in work and re-outsourcing it and pocketing the difference. There's good money to be made. Otherwise, did we use an algorithm to count the flags? So what we did is we extracted a lot of information, a lot more that I haven't been able to get through in this talk, and to be quite fair, I haven't thoroughly analyzed from the different requests, including the country associated with the bid winner there. So I have quite a large data set of information for that. Yeah, so we were able to identify the flag because essentially it has an alt tag which says what the country is to go along with the flag, rather than anything too sophisticated for that there. Yeah, and I did do a little bit, I have done a bit of data looking at the other currencies. And if you pay in euros, you're going to pay a bit more. That was the highest paying, but I think the sample size, I don't want to draw too many conclusions based on that for various reasons, because there are all kinds of other reasons why you may pay about $100 by paying in euros instead of US dollars. So what is the really interesting, juicy data that I've come up with that are trends I think we should be concerned about? Just a quick word cloud, looking in the project titles, not as sophisticated as some of the linguistical analysis we've seen already this week, but these are the words that come across in the titles there. The word write, unsurprisingly, appears. You may spot words in there like project, writer, paper, research, academic, essay. If anything really surprises you there, then by all means, throw out a comment in the chat. But just a few things there: analysis, review, or weighted based on the size of this. I did an analysis of the project titles and the names of academic disciplines that appeared in those titles. And these are the ones that I found. Now, this is not an exact science because there can be 2-word titles that appear in there, like, say, engineering science, which I would just have classified as science there. Or in fact, I've classified it twice, once for engineering, once for science, but it's going to give us a general idea about the most frequently occurring disciplines, and business occurred in the most of those. It doesn't surprise me greatly by other requests there. Yeah, management as well, which really I would associate with business. Sometimes I might merge those terms together, but I left them separately. English is slightly dubious because this could also say something like, I need someone who speaks good English there, but it is a discipline to go with that. But you'll see some of the examples that fall in there. Law always concerns me because of what we expect from people working in that profession, or maybe what we don't expect. Engineering, finance, psychology, health, history, medical, economics, for that. Just giving a general overview that in common with other studies, we see business quite a lot. Anything that has science and evidence, actually, computer science for Mike there, we could have seen as well there to go with that. Proofread edit, yeah, they didn't tend to focus very much. Nursing hasn't appeared in that top list. I think it did appear somewhere quite a long way down, but with only very few requests. But definitely SA Mills aimed very specifically at nursing. And in terms of those disciplines, the word medical, medicine didn't really appear, incidentally, very much. Yeah, medical did. Highest paying one, average price of $200, but the sample sizes of the ones we've got payment for is relatively small. People don't pay much for law out of that. And if you want literature writing, which I guess could be a book report or something like that, then you'll get lots of bids. It presumably looks quite easy, but I want to drill into the, and health can often include nursing and various other categories. But I'm keen to drill a bit into medical because this one stood out for me just looking at that. And there are 2 projects in with $750 there, which went in that. These are the requests that we saw. Medical project number 1, to write a manuscript and help in submission in targeted medical journals. Published as a medical case report, the highest quality of work within a stipulated time frame is expected there. And we will supply one of these to you every 2 months. Just interesting because there's a lot of ghost written work in the ghost written academic papers in medicine. That's quite well known, but interesting seeing this one going through a freelancing site with these requests, including the targeting for this. And this was awarded to the individual you can see at the bottom of the screen, who hasn't had a great number of reviews. We don't know quite how this feeds in to everything there. Sorry, let me say that again. The writer's had a lot of reviews. The employer has not had many reviews for that, but does have the word doctor in their pseudonym. So quite potentially concerning that these things are going on. Here is another one as well, request from Philadelphia in the United States to write an observational human study focused on pain, opioid use, and quality of life outcomes. Statistics are ready. That's a good thing, isn't it? They've already got the statistics, but they wanted preparing for a peer-reviewed journal with a limit of 3,500 words. So a very short one, sent to somebody from Kenya to do for that. The writer from Kenya has a qualification, apparently, if you believe them, from Oxford Brookes. So again, our writers often claim to have very good international qualifications. Clearly, I've not been to check that one out, but there is a lot of information there from this person who has completed 460 pieces of work. And then the other types of projects we're seeing, just to give you an indication of medicine, just focusing on this one discipline, because it's one that probably concerns all of us there. Yeah, sorry, Mary, being an Oxford Brookes person. Yeah, prepare a PowerPoint medical lecture. Now, is this for a student? Is it for an academic? Who knows? But you don't just see written work, but it happened. This appeared under the academic writing search term. Write my application for medical school. Say about your values. There's a lot of these requests about writing about ethics. Write a 100-word paragraph rationale for multiple choice questions. Double check them. Make notes and multiple choice questions for medical and pharmacy questions. I don't know what that means. Is this writing a test for an academic? Is this writing practice questions? Who knows, but interesting area for that. Mike Reddy says you should argue that law should plagiarize being based on precedent. It's a life skill. Yeah, interesting point, Mike. What other side sort of comment about academic outsourcing, as some people like to say, the type of work, very, very similar. Look at the titles and going through this. We do see proofreading in there, but it's probably was hidden away for, I think it was Ola who said it's probably hidden away in that word cloud and not so visible, but it's quite a long way down the list when writing and research dominates. But we are seeing proofreading, PhD, presentation occurs in this as well. But words you'd expect: writing, essay, research, project. Project is always worrying if this is a final year project or a capstone project, but various other examples to go with that. The word data gives you the highest price, but that one is again inflated by a $2,000 project for that. Write a report about big data and privacy to do with Cambridge Analytica, 100-page report for this. 15 to 20-day deadline as the company wants it back very quickly. The word company is a bit misleading in that one because it does say the research or a stroke writer will be assisted by a supervisor. So what does all this one mean? You need to understand these things. Is this an academic piece of work? Is this a business piece of work? Who knows? It does come across to me like it's likely to be a final year project or something like that, possibly outside of computing. There possibly data privacy and ethics and everything, but somebody is willing to pay quite a lot for that one to go with that. Second highest paying category in terms of those keywords: research, $140 a time based on 64 projects. Decent amount of data for that one to check that one. If you just write an essay, you're only going to get $40. So as one of my esteemed colleagues here will say, ditch the essay. It is very cheap to outsource in comparison. It doesn't necessarily tell us all that much. PhD, for where we have a data about the price paid, $122, but again, that one is slightly misleading as well, I suspect. Interesting tweet and discussion last week, well, just over a week ago, there was a new paper released looking at the targeting of doctoral candidates by contract cheating websites. Well worth a read, looking at how they market to them. Quite coincidentally, I'd already put most of these slides together by then, but I've just slipped this in because it feeds in very well with some of the things that I saw looking at this data set, of which the PhD requests are mainly for proposals. They don't tend to be so obviously for the chapters themselves, although I have seen examples of those. So these are the kind of things you will see. That doesn't excuse it, the fact that they're for proposals. It possibly makes it worse because we saw I saw an interesting session on application fraud yesterday with some of our Canadian colleagues, that and there are a lot of fake statements going through there. But we're seeing things like write a statement of purpose, edit my PhD proposal, help me get a place at a UK university, preferably the University of Leicester. And other such examples that are appearing in there. But people are wanting their place on a PhD. They're not exclusively proposals, and this really is my final example of the session there. Somebody on a DBA, a doctorate in business administration. We also often see MBAs wanting a formal academic writer, and the PhD came up in this one in the title because they want someone with a PhD as opposed to they're asking for PhD work, although a DBA is PhD level work, really. And this person is essentially saying, I've done a lot of it, but not finished it. I need more doing. So where do we, is this as bad as doing the PhD from scratch? They've done some work for themselves. Well, of course it is very bad, but that is a different story there. Yeah, they know exactly what they want, as Mary mentioned. Help with the critical literature review, the methodology, data analysis, recommendations, and proofreading. Proofreading can appear, I needed a bit more analysis of the content of these other than just the title, but proofreading definitely appears, but most things are requesting all the work for that. And yeah, the critical literature review needs to be done first. It does. Interesting to try and do this at, after 80% of the degree requirements are done. I suppose DBAs have a bit of a talk component as well, so they're probably slightly different there. But the people requesting these are picking up on things there, like don't bid if you write for blogs and magazines. They want to know it's somebody who knows the score. Just like we're seeing things like don't bid if you're going to plagiarize, because they know about these things. Now, it's not clear if this was actually done. I suspect it probably moved into a private auction. I've certainly seen examples of people hiring a writer and paying them a chapter at a time. I've even got an example filed somewhere where they were sending audio feedback from the supervisor back to the writer every time that the student requesting the work had clearly been having the meetings and been audio recording them. Be even easier these days because it will all be on Zoom recorded that way for that. And yeah, and very clear this person has done it before. Yeah, contract cheating doesn't just happen once. So there's just a few observations about what really is a treasure trove. There's so much stuff on there for anyone who wants to go and analyze Freelancer. There's 2 years more work out there. But for me, what stands out is really this push. A few years ago, Freelancer would say, well, we don't endorse academic services, but now they have academic writing categories. So what is this otherwise? And we're definitely seeing trends. There's many more trends you could find, but for me, medicine, applications, doctoral fraud, other issues that have appeared throughout this conference. And there's a lot of data, just if you do want to go away and analyze this at your own subject level there. So to me, really worrying, because this is a site where we can see what's going on. The majority of contract cheating sites are private and we can't see what's going on for that. So thanks very much. Feel free to join in the discussion here, and feel free to connect with me as well. The slides will be up later on today. Sandy mentions that the contractor nowadays can turn up in the student's place with their camera off. Yeah, they can, particularly if you're doing let's say a PhD by distance learning, which was happening even before the pandemic. And people will say, my internet connection isn't very good, or they don't want to share their camera, and you don't really know who you're verifying. Then how do you get around that? Really interesting point. How do you know the person you're talking to every week is the right one for that? But yeah, they will charge a fee for that service. I mean, that example I mentioned about the person who was doing a PhD chapter by chapter as well, from the bit of data I could find, and this was 3 or 4 years ago now, this person was also working on several undergraduate final year projects and dissertations at the same time as well, and taking on other work. So they're obviously able to balance their time very well and to bring together work that, well, that was satisfying their employers or satisfying the academics who are eventually assessing this. Robin says, some people want a PhD without the hassle and they have lots of money. Yeah, they do. People have money to spend. Definitely happens. And you can outsource things very cheaply if you want. Yeah, Deborah, hi.
Oh, hi. Great, scary talk, as always. What I find most disconcerting about this is what appears to be ghostwriters employing ghostwriters employing ghostwriters. So that we have this sort of like chain going down, everybody making a little bit of money on the way down. The poor people at the end are probably are only getting paid a pittance. Have you seen this often, or is it just the first time that you've seen it here?
Oh, there's the idea about people taking in work and essentially being a middle person in a chain and outsourcing it again. We saw some examples of that back in 2006 there.
Oh my.
So it wasn't, so it wasn't completely unknown. And you could tell because these requests going on to what was Rent-A-Coder then were, they were just too much of a diverse range of subjects for them to be all the requests from one person. So it was happening. And it's obviously the whole area of contract cheating has skyrocketed. There's so many more requests, but so many people now are just looking at this as a very good business model. And then the other part of the chain that takes so much more of the money is that goes to the providers of advertising. It goes to the people allowing adverts on Facebook or Google, paid adverts, or it goes to the affiliate sites where they list the different options, you could send your essay to any one of these 100 companies and give them all a star rating there. But actually, they're taking 50% of the money the student is paying for providing the customer, just like other types of businesses do. So the end writer in this process, unless they are able to connect directly with the student, and some people do, but not many, the end writer is going to be getting a pittance, as you say. End writer might be getting that, a few dollars a day for doing all this work. Yeah. Sandy mentions the interesting point that you can hire people to turn up academic misconduct meetings. You definitely can. That's a premium type service. Some universities allow it, or I don't want to say allow it, but the processes don't explicitly have a way to forbid it there. And so you're almost ending up being a legal type process as well. And in fact, people will hire people to write their statement to say, I've been found plagiarizing, I have to write a statement. I need somebody to write that statement. All these things are quite, I see Robin, so you're nodding, all these things happen as well. Yeah, there's so many examples. You can hire people to do nearly anything. Hire somebody to tie your shoelaces if you want, and you have the money and you feel so inclined. Happens as well there. Robin says, increasingly the case that where stats are involved, the lead ghostwriter subcontracts the stats. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. So people will have their different levels of expertise, but they won't want to turn down work. So they will take the work anyway, and they'll outsource a bit of it that they can't do, or that they don't want to do, or which is less desirable for them. In the same way, some of you might have seen me talk before that things like basic maths and stats generally can be outsourced very cheaply because you don't require good English to do those. So there's that way you can work strategically and work out what bits you're going to do yourself and what bits you ask somebody else to do there. So these basic assignments that can be done by almost anyone are a particular risk, which is a shame because there are also things we need to know that students can do as foundational knowledge that we're going to build upon later in their courses. Yeah. So very challenging problems, no matter how we try to address this. Such a complex industry there. And unfortunately, like I'm sure Robin would say as well, the more you drill down into this, the more shocking and concerning things you find and the more worried you are.
Oh yes, every time I think I can't find anything nastier or weirder, something suddenly crosses my desk.
Same thing with plagiarism and dissertations.
Yeah.
You think you've seen the lowest point.
Yeah, well, you do such great work, Deborah, and the people you work with, trying to find out the plagiarized theses that have been slowly slipped into the system with very little accountability, and yes, what is happening with those is of great concern as well there. Yeah, Mary mentions medical contract cheating is really worrying. Universities need to increase scrutiny. 100%. I'd love someone, especially someone in the medical field, who knows all the intricacies of this, to do a study about contract cheating in medicine and to really drill down into the detail, that level of detail I don't have, because I can do it at a high level as well. Some of you may know that I ran a new module this year. I gave a talk at the ICI conference with undergraduate students, looking at academic integrity research, and nearly everyone who signed up for that module was a medical student there because they were really interested in that work. So some people are very concerned. It was only 8 students, so first year it ran. It isn't a huge sample, but these were undergraduates there. So I know medical students are concerned about this probably a lot, as we talk about students with partners, a lot more than the staff in many cases, or just the staff do not realize that this is going to be such a big issue. But yeah, the written work is outsourced. And as we see so often, nursing didn't come up so much through Freelancer, because probably that is not the site that nurses go to. But through other ways of accessing help and essays, the nursing appears such a lot. There, it really happens. Yeah. So as Deborah says, do we use different type of assessments? Robin says, do we use physical viva voces? Yeah. What is the solution? Do we need to record them? how do we guarantee integrity, or how do we balance this mix between the fact you can't check every single assignment in the same amount of detail with the kind of systems we have in operation in universities. It's not going to be physically possible for us, but how can we balance this and have some kind of assurance that the right students are doing the work and they have the abilities to go into professional practice in the field they're qualified for? And how do we stop the problem in the business discipline, which quite often says that you do go back and you do this MBA or this DBA because you just need a qualification to go to a high paid job. Perhaps in the same way as you're a politician, you get the word doctor in front of your name, you're more likely to be elected, or you're going to be positioned in a higher place in the society, even though it makes probably no real difference to your ability or lack of ability to be a good politician there. So how do we change that mindset as well there? How do we address that particular problem? And Oscar, I suspect you're wanting to bring this to a close, so I shall hand over to you.
Thank you, Thomas. And I have one question also. When I check these contract cheating websites, I noticed some novice contract cheaters. They explicitly write their departments, their names. I saw some gigs on Fiverr like this. Do you think we should encourage people to be whistleblowers about these people? Do you think we should inform their departments about this issue?
So if you can identify who the student is involved in a case, then yeah, I think that we should inform people. It's not always easy. People don't always respond. I think Rahul, who I worked with on another project, is going to talk a bit tomorrow, who is another student partner, has been doing some of that as well. And hopefully he will say a bit about the detective work he's done. Bob Clark, who before his sad passing, did a lot of work identifying cases on Freelancer and notifying the academics. And his biggest frustration was people wouldn't respond, or there would be no contact information on the website to help with that. But yeah, the more we can inform people and say this is going on, the better. Most definitely there. And I see the Litzer asks, can we get the students to talk about this with journalists? Litzer have been trying. It's sometimes harder. Ben had hoped to be here today, but unfortunately he's got a dose of food poisoning overnight, and these things happen sometimes. The thing is, these students have all presented to the academic integrity module I mentioned as well. So they have shared their work with a group of students and tried to promote it. So they've been quite happy to talk about it there in those settings. But I think the area of the press and the media is quite scary to people. I had the same with Codrin, who did some great work with me on the Czech research we published earlier this year, looking at the numbers. And I was trying very much to convince Codrin to speak to some of the journalists rather than all come to me, and he was not so keen to put himself out there for whatever reason. So that is something that I will have to think about how to work on. I've got stage one, which is getting the students more involved in the research side, and then the next stage is getting them more involved in the publicity side, which I mean, quite frankly, academics in many subjects aren't that keen to do either. So I quite understand that from the student point of view. And yeah, Litzer says stage fright is a big thing. I'm quite fortunate that I didn't expect to be presenting all these slides today, but there's so much about this area I can talk about that for me it isn't so scary, because I just have so many anecdotes I can fall back on if I need them. You're all amused for a bit of time and don't use the same ones too often, but for a student it's slightly more challenging there. But yeah, and as Felicity and others have said, and yeah, we need to reward academics for promoting academic integrity, acting on cases and seeing that this is addressed and really helping the students to succeed. I think that is the point to end on today for that, because I'm conscious there is a very busy schedule for that. But thank you so much for the interesting discussion. I hope this has been useful and not too scary there. I hope to do more of this data as and when time permits, but unfortunately it is, as Sandy has just mentioned, working on academic integrity research is invisible in workload models, just like working on academic integrity is often invisible in workload models. So things we need to address. Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you, Thomas. This was really a great presentation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned. The conference will continue with other great presentations after the lunch break.